Now, David, I alluded a little bit to the beginning of your story, how it began in Iran. Will you just share with us a little bit about your upbringing and the beginning of your story?
Absolutely. I'm originally from the country Iran, and in 1979, the Iranian Revolution happened in my country. I was 9 years old at that time, and so we went through a pretty traumatic moment in life. I call it traumatic hostility, really the opposite of hospitality, where 1/36 of our nation was massacred and killed when religion went wrong, when the Ayatollah Khomeini and his zealots kind of took over our country. My dad was high ranked in the military at that time, and so we knew that our entire family's life, especially my dad's, was in danger. And so we planned our escape, and it was in pretty dramatic fashion, but we escaped from Iran and went to Europe, where we were stuck there for about 9 months, trying to make it to the United States. And so after 9 months, God just opened up the door, and we came here under political asylum, which is just a fancy way of saying we came here as refugees to the United States.
Yeah, and that's a story that's been talked about a lot in recent years, just refugees and how does America receive refugees. You're the benefactor of coming into a place that you didn't know anyone. I mean, you showed up, and I know even in Iran, you'd had traumatic events in your own life, from a gun to your head and in school, thinking you were going to die. I mean, just crazy, crazy stuff. Your book just does a great job of captivating. I know my children were just like, wow, what a story.
Sure.
But you get here to the U.S. and immediately you have to find your way in school, in a new community. What was that like? What was your experience?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, I think in Iran we went through a pretty physical, traumatic experience with the revolution, and like you said, people coming and dragging my father out of our home, and people coming to school and putting the gun in my head. And then when we came to the United States, because we were from the wrong place at the wrong time, and people were watching on TV how Iranians were burning the American flag, calling America the Great Satan. 54 American hostages were held in the American embassy in Iran. Oh, wow. So we were from the wrong place at the wrong time, and we moved to a military town in Texas on top of everything. And so imagine that perfect storm. Wow. And so as a fish out of water, I came here and I went from physical trauma to emotional trauma. I was the kid who never got invited to, spend the night at anybody's house. I was the kid that saw the birthday party invitations for the skating rink get handed to every kid in the class but me. And so being this fish out of water made me pretty bitter about God. To me, it was God's fault that we'd escaped Iran. Religion and God to me was just kind of a combined thing. I had a lot of misunderstandings. And so I just continued to get more and more bitter at God when we came to the States. And I was this outcasted kid who kind of ate his lunch alone every day. And again, felt like there was this emotional hostility of even abandonment, which is just a weapon of the enemy as well.
Well, and I know for those listening, I mean, you're getting to hear firsthand what people feel like when they're the other. And that's what David's family went through. It's what you went through. Sometimes for many people, like, it's hard for them to know, what would that have felt like? I think you just heard it. You can feel completely isolated, completely alone. Now, there's this moment in your story, and I want you to share it with everybody, where you get invited to go to a church. And you going to church was not an option, really, in your family. They didn't want you to go to church. The Christian church was not the place you went because you'd grown up in a Muslim family. So what happened when you get this invitation to church?
Yeah, so fast forward from the years where I was kind of the outcasted kid, and really in high school there was a bit of a reboot when my dad felt sorry for me always being the loner. So he gave me this extreme makeover, and I became this kid with the right haircut, the right clothes.
You had parachute pants?
I had parachute pants, I had the members only jacket, all of that. 9 swatches, and the whole thing, product of the 80s, man. And so, my high school years became these years where I found fabricated hospitality, and so I found out how to end up at the right lunchroom table, how to dump the right girl before she could dump me, how to be cold to people, to be perceived as cool to people. But on the inside, I was just as empty. And so high school years felt like at least emotional duct tape was being put on some of the emotions. And then I graduated from high school, and I hit this reality that all my friends were going away. And so about 2 months after high school, one night I was smoking weed with the only buddy I had left who hadn't gone to college yet. And I was telling him...
he was smoking weed.
Huh?
He didn't go to college because he was
That's exactly
busy
right.
smoking weed.
That's exactly right. And so was I. And so while we were passing a joint back and forth, he invited me to go to church with him, simply because I had told him how all our friends had gone away. And I know that sounds weird, but that's so the South, right? Yeah. So he invited me to go to church with him, and I told him I don't want to go. I saw religion destroy my country when I was a kid. I have no interest in it. But ironically enough, he named these people that we were social with in high school. And so he had me interested in wanting to go, but I told him, I said, my father will never let me go to church though. And he said, why? And I said, because, we're Muslims by heritage. We're pretty much, not gonna want to have anything to do with like a local Baptist church. And he kept bothering me to ask my dad. And so I went in on a Saturday night to ask my dad if I can go to church, just so he would say no in front of my friend, and my friend would leave me alone. But what I didn't know was 2 weeks before my friend was inviting me to church, stoned out of his mind, there were these people who had begun a relationship with my dad. My dad owned a French restaurant in Birmingham. And so when I asked my dad if I can go to church, instead of saying no, he said, what's the name of the church? And the reason that he asked the name was because there were these people from this church, Shades Mountain Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, who had come to my dad's restaurant to eat. My dad owned the restaurant. And they'd seen how he was shorthanded on wait staff. And instead of complaining about the bad service that they were getting, the worship pastor of the church and several members had quietly gotten up during lunch rush and waited on tables at my dad's restaurant to help him out. Then they went back the next day, Gabe, and waited on tables again. And then a guy named Aubrey Edwards, who was the worship pastor, invited my dad to choir practice, my military Iranian dad. But because they were so kind to him, Romans 2, kindness leads to repentance, my dad said yes. And so my dad went to choir practice. Wow. And the worship pastor took a piece of paper and said, everyone who sings in the choir needs to volunteer at this man's restaurant. He needs help. And so for 2 weeks, they'd parachuted in and they'd shown hospitality. They'd shown kindness to my dad. And so they'd waited on tables and they were bus boys. And so fast forward 2 weeks later, I'm asking my dad if I can go to church. And instead of saying no, my dad said, what's the name of it? And it happened to be the same church as the people that had helped him out. And so I'm literally a byproduct of, I was allowed to go to church by my Muslim father because of a kindness act, because of the hospitality that was shown to my father.
And then you became a believer, like in that story. And
Absolutely.
Did your family come to Christ?
Yeah, so I went to this church, and then they started coming to my house and sharing the gospel with me. And after 8 weeks of hearing the gospel, one night I became a Christian. My parents weren't devout as Muslims until the night I became a Christian. Then they became instantly devout. And I got kicked out of the house for becoming a believer. But within 5 years, I saw my entire family come to know the Lord.
God, yeah, man, that is amazing.
Yeah, but we really, my story is not about an Iranian kid that turned out okay. My story is we went through traumatic hostility, and then it got hijacked by traumatic hospitality.
Yeah,
God's people showed up. Right. They didn't ask me to show up at their church. They first showed up at my home. They showed up at my dad's restaurant, and they were just gracious, and they were kind, and they were hospitable.
Isn't that
so
incredible?
That warmed my dad's heart up to allow me to go to church.
It's just amazing to hear practically how people had the vision to see that their neighbor needed help. At a restaurant, a lot of us would just feel uncomfortable offering help. We would just not go to that restaurant because we said, hey, that has bad service. Right. Instead, they go, we're going to help this man. They saw the humanity. They saw the image of God and said, we have a responsibility here. It's just beautiful. Right. In closing, hospitality has become a gift of yours. As I've been around you, you're one of the most hospitable people I know. What is it about hospitality that you think today, beyond just the story we just heard, but why is it just so important for this to just envelop our lives?
Sure. I think a lot like what you just said earlier, in our gathering here today, it's a virtue, it's a command. It's not so much a gift, a spiritual gift, as much as it is a command from God. And so we're called as believers to be believable, as Christians to be Christ-like. And the way that we can exude that to the lost, the way that we exude that to the hurting, is to open our lives up to people. And so at Liberty, where I work, my day job, I host 88 convocations a year. And so just by that alone, we have over 150 guests at our home, at my home, for dinner the night before there are convo guests.
The best dinners.
Yeah.
If you ever can get through Lynchburg, Virginia, try to look up David Nasser, because they have the best hospitality.
Well,
the best
you're gracious
dinners.
for saying that. But to me, I think because for so many years I was the kid that never got anyone to let me into their home. Right. I thought if I ever if I ever get to host dinners, I'm having extravagant dinners, you know, and and so from that to showing people how to be a hospital, to be a hospice, to be a place of rest for people that come our way. It's just a way for us to say, you're coming as a guest or whatever into our city, into our home, to be to come pour into our students. Well, why don't we pour back into you? And so hospitality for us is a no-brainer. Honestly, it is just also a way to value people, you know, and so it's been the gift that's kept on giving.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I know it's inspired everybody listening to just better understand practically how everything we're talking about tonight shows up in people's lives and really can change entire families and generations. So thank you, David, for being with us.
You bet.